If you've ever had a moment where you thought, if I could just go back in time, I would make different choices, that's where Cat is. She just has a memory bleed and a hidden system she's not supposed to have. This is Chapter 3. This is where the cracks start showing and where something hidden finally flickers back to life. Chapter 3. Cat's dreams weren't soft or subtle anymore. One in particular kept chasing her down every time she let her guard drop. Light, pain, and a kind of sound that doesn't echo. It just ends. Falling, not floating, and a scream that never finishes. And then, nothing. Cat shot upright in bed, heart hammering against her ribs, fingers fisted in the old quilt. The top bunk loomed above her, and her head cracked against the underside with a hollow thud. Ow, damn it, I'm gonna have a malformed head if this keeps up, she muttered, rubbing the sore spot. Mina stirred faintly beside her, but didn't wake. Her small body curled into a question mark beneath the covers. The room was cold, smelling faintly of laundry detergent and canned goods. Cat sat frozen for a moment, letting the panic ebb from her body. The dream still clung to her skin like smoke, but the details were already scattering. Only a single echo remained, a voice, hers, but not, older and worn down. You left something for yourself. Catherine's heart hammered painfully. She slipped quietly out of bed and pattered into the corner of the room where there was just enough space to move. Her feet prickled against the cold floor. She dropped into a low squat, then gently knelt, sitting back on her heels. Her arms lifted in a slow arc before pressing together in front of her chest. Not quite yoga, not quite martial arts. Something in between, a ritual her body remembered, even if her mind didn't. Her breath became slow and deliberate, shaping each motion like it mattered. Genkai, she whispered out loud. The word came to her unbidden, not in English, not in memory, just presence. Breathe, align. The words returned not as instruction, but as an invitation, a threshold. She moved instinctively, stretching her spine upward, pulling in a deep breath into her lungs, pressing her hand flat against the center of her chest. She didn't know why she said the word, only that it made her mind go quiet. Like the space between thoughts, like sliding between doors in her own mind. Nothing happened. Again. Pulse, breathe, align. She flowed through the motions, quiet and steady. Nothing happened. Again, and she did it again. She repeated the flows several times more, until she almost gave up. The floor was freezing, and the ache in her muscles began to whisper doubts. Her breath stuttered, her fingers trembled. She shifted her stance, realigned, and pressed harder. On the 8th try, something changed, like the air thickened, vibrating at a frequency just beyond hearing. A shimmer floated in front of her eyes. Cat sucked in a breath. What the? Across her vision, neat digital letters blinked into existence. System initialized. User Catherine Wu, age 16, level 0. XP 10 out of 500. QP 0 out of 500. HP 10 out of 20. Her eyes flicked down the rest. Oh right, these ones were all out of 20. Strength 2. Dexterity 2. Intelligence 11. Higher than I expected. Concentration 4. High success rate in crafting protocols. Luck 2. Status active. Skills none. Skill progress 0. Store available at level 3. Grayed out. The heads up display faded from the view when she blinked. But the knowledge didn't. It stayed, like it had always been there. Kat grasped at the floating overlay. It was clean, minimalist, and yet undeniable. She waved her hands through it experimentally. It stayed pinned to revision, unfazed. Status online, she read under her breath. Online? The internet barely existed yet outside universities. What did online even mean? And this was the system, wasn't it? Her mind reeled. She remembered bits and pieces. From a memory that wasn't hers yet is hers, hearing rumors about a government beta program. When she was much older, in her mid-20s, she had been at a cheap birthday dinner, too broke to care about anything except the bill. The news had spread like wildfire, a mental enhancement system being quietly rolled out to the elite, the chosen. Kat had scoffed. She remembered it, the bitterness sharper than the cheap soda she nursed at the table. She had told herself that the news was fake, stupid, and none of it would ever touch her life. And now, she laid that down slowly, her body moving automatically. She tucked herself under the quilt, wrapping her arm around Mina's tiny frame as she stared into the dark. The overlay faded from sight when she blinked twice, but the knowledge remained, thrumming inside her bones. She had a head start. She had knowledge. She had the system. And maybe this time she had time to change. That night before sleep took her, she tried to trigger the HUD again. Pulse, breathe, align. Nothing shimmered. Again, and she tried again. Still, the display didn't appear, but something in her stilled. A hush beneath the noise. She fell asleep faster than she had in weeks that night. The morning buzzed with the weary rhythm of survival. Grandpa shuffled past the bathroom door, slippers dragging heavily across the peeling linoleum, muttering curses about the coal gnawing at his knees. Kat caught a glimpse of him, pausing to rub his joints with hands that looked like paper stretched too thin, the knuckles swollen and stiff. He wore the same threadbare cardigan he always did in winter, the elbows worn shiny from years and leaning on counters and railings for balance. In the kitchen, the faint clatter of a battered frying pan echoed off the cramped walls. Mum stood hunched at the stove, one hand on her hip, the other flipping slices of leftover rice cakes with mechanical precision. The smell of toasted sesame oil filled the apartment, heavy and thick, settling into the faded curtains and cracked countertops. Her hair hung damp around her face, and every movement of her body looked like it cost more than it gave back. When she thought no one was looking, she sagged against the stove, shoulders curling inward like someone trying to fold herself small enough to escape notice. Kat poured a mug of warm water and, the kettle having long since broken, sat on the kitchen table. She traced a long crack in the vinyl surface with one finger, following its jagged path like a roadmap to nowhere. Everything looked the same, but she wasn't the same. She studied them, her family, with new eyes. Every sagging breath Grandpa took, every small wince he tried to hide, every muttered sigh from Mother, her mouth tightening as she counted coins in her head, even while flipping breakfast. Details Kat had missed the first time, too lost in her own resentment, too full of the sharp-edged anger of youth to see how hard her family fought just to keep going. It hadn't been fair, and it still wasn't. But they hadn't given up, and neither would she. I won't waste this life, not when I've been given a chance again, Kat vowed silently, wrapping both hands around the warm mug like it could anchor her to this moment. At school that afternoon, Kat clutched her books to her chest and walked slower than usual down the hallway, her ears half tuned to the familiar chaos around her. The building smelled like damp wool and cafeteria pizza, a sticky combination that never quite left, even in winter. Kids shoved boots into lockers, coats flapped open like tired flags, and the air buzzed with leftover adrenaline from recess. Near the lockers by the stairwell, a knot of students huddled together, the bright stripes of their scarves and jackets clashing like a battlefield full of flags. "The science fair prizes are insane this year," a girl said, adjusting her glittery hairband with a dramatic flip of her hair. "Mr. Grant said $500 for first place. $500? Can you imagine what that could buy? Like a Discman, real silver jewelry, even a trip to Toronto." Kat slowed instinctively, the words catching at the edge of her mind like burrs. Talia's familiar voice floated up next, oozing boredom. "Who cares? It's always the rich kids who win. Their parents help them build stuff, or they hire secret tutors." There was a mean ripple of laughter. Another boy, one Kat vaguely recognized from math class, chimed in louder. "Yeah, seriously, if you don't have a basement lab and parents who drive you to Home Depot and Home Hardware twice a week, don't even bother. You're just cannonball." Kat didn't stop walking. She just slowed, like her muscles were remembering something before her mind did. That old resignation, that shrug it off reflex. But it didn't land this time, not fully, not cleanly. She gripped the strap of her backpack tighter, fingers brushing against the battered edge of her hidden notebook. Inside her, something cracked. It wasn't outrage, or jealousy, or even bitterness. It was something quieter, hotter, a slow coiling of defiance she hadn't felt in years, a question of dare. What if I tried anyways? She turned away before anyone could see the flicker of stubborn light in her eyes. She slipped past the knot of students unnoticed, their voices fading into the background noise again, swallowed by the metallic slam of lockers and the squeak of wet boots on tile. The edges of a plan began to take shape in the back of her mind, faint, unsteady, but real. And this time, she wouldn't laugh it off or let it rot untried. This time, she would move. Maybe, just maybe, she would enter the science fair. Quietly, carefully, anonymously, she hoped. She opened the sister's room with some difficulty and then whispered, "Open skills store." Skills store. Design level 1. Cost 2 SP. Kat only had 1 SP. Just enough for nothing. But still, it was a start. At the bottom of the interface, a suggestion pulsed. Increase SP by completing daily missions. Kat grinned as she read. Daily mission. Read Canadian inventions in everyday engineering cover to cover. Time limit 24 hours. She remembered that book, dusty, forgotten, in the library back shelves. She had checked it out once on a whim, and never made it past the introduction pages. This time, she thought fiercely, I'll finish reading it, and in under 24 hours to boot. She closed the overlay and folded her jacket tighter around herself. The old notebook clutched against her chest. She didn't know how she would win, or even if she could, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity. She would not let her second chance rot away in silence. Her system display flickered faintly, as if echoing her resolve. Kat smiled, her will hardening. Hell yeah, mission accepted. Half a world away, the mountains of e-waste loomed against the blue sunset, like crumbling altars of human neglect. The air was sharp with the stench of burning plastic and scorched metal, a heavy chemical fog that clung to the skin and filled every breath with invisible knives. Pools of blackening water simmered between broken towers of dead technology, their surfaces iridescent with oil and mercury. Children and teenagers picked through the towering piles of shattered computers, cracked screens, and tangled cables. The hands were quick and practiced, their skin mottled with burns that never quite healed. They worked with bare hands or scavenged tools, prying apart dead machines with the copper veins hidden inside, trading scraps of poison for a few coins and another day of survival. Among them, a boy no older than Nina crouched low, working with a rusted screwdriver to strip the skeleton of an old motherboard. Sweat slicked his brow in the sweltering air. Metal wires snapped and sprung apart dangerously close to his fingers. But he didn't flinch. He had long ago learned that fear didn't feed you. As he worked, he imagined just for a moment that the pieces in his hands were not trash, but parts of something new. Parts of a machine that could clean the poison rivers where he lived. Maybe create a roof that could grow itself from living fibers, sheltering his family from the rains. A world where no one had to choose between hunger and poison. In the quiet places of his mind, the boy dreamed, not of just surviving another day, but of a future where he could build and where what he built would not rot beneath his hands. The scavengers of Tima worked fast and silent, trading childhoods of scrap for copper and hope. In the shadow of progress, not everyone got a second chance. But some, even in the ashes, still dared to imagine and hope for something better. Thousands of miles away, under the heavy chandeliers of the Ba Olaf in Zurich, the dynasties gathered. Not politicians, not celebrities, bloodlines. The true architects of power, wrapped in hand-woven silks and custom Italian suits, their hands as smooth as their words were sharp. The room smelt of beeswax and polished marble. A quartet played discreetly near the grand staircase, the strains of classical music threading through the air like fine gold dust. Conversations buzzed low and careful, punctuated by the soft clink of crystal glasses and the rustle of starched linen napkins. Near the center of the hall, clustered around a table draped in white damask, a group of elders leaned over thick leather folders filled with grainy photographs and printed reports. One man tapped the corner of a black and white image, showing mountains of crumpled electronics and tiny figures crawling through the wreckage. The reclamation news are rising, he murmured, his voice barely louder than the music. Scrap values are increasing. Labor there is cheaper than machinery. A woman draped in deep maroon sari sipped her wine and smiled without warmth.
बचपन से ही सेवा,
she said softly, service from childhood, an old phrase among the elite, uttered without irony. Another man in a Nehru jacket gave a short, precise nod. There was a ripple of agreement. No raised voices, no open cruelty, just a smooth, oiled machine grinding through the generations, its gears greased with crushed bodies of the lost and forgotten, so many no one cared to count. At the head of the table, a matriarch in pearls and ivy silk folded her hands in her lap, watching with sharp and blinking eyes.
परंपरा,
Tradition must be upheld, she said, her Hindi accent bleeding into her crisp English, each syllable cutting through the air like a blade, meaning tradition above all, blood above sentiment. Across the room, standing apart from the suffocating warmth of the chandeliers, a boy about 20 years of age watched it all unfold. His posture was perfect, shoulders square, chin lifted just enough to meet the expectations drilled into him since birth. His suit was bespoke, stitched with the threads dyed in the old ways. He rolled his shoulders, stretching the fabric, trying to loosen the tension. His face betrayed nothing, A tall, broad-shouldered, built to intimidate, he was as they expected, a perfect candidate for the succession race. But inside, something strained against his chains. He heard the words, the quiet discussions about markets and mergers and sacrifice, the dismissive way they spoke of desperate people as pawns, of human lives as statistics. His jaw clenched. He remembered the smell, the burning plastic, wet heat. Not from the photo, from the visit they weren't supposed to speak of. He tucked it all away behind his carefully blank expression. The memory of Tima, the memory of Ash, the memory of blood that was not their blood. He would not forget. And someday, when the cracks widened and the tower of this dynasty began to tilt, he would be standing right at the edge of the fault line, watching them fall. If you're still here, then maybe you felt it too. Something moving underneath the silence. The system is listening now. Just don't blink. Follow the next transmission.